Hello and welcome everyone to another interview. Today we're going to be giving you guys an update on Operation Noetics, and we've also got Serene Teffaha joining us today, which is really great because she's actually been quite involved in it as well. So maybe we'll get straight into it. Serene, just give us a little bit of a, I guess, a background on how you got involved in this case.
Very, very quickly, I got involved in this case to assist GREER. This is 2.5 years ago when they had their committal hearing. I couldn't believe what I saw in the materials. Paul Burton was involved, Graham Bell was involved, and so many people, who were supporting GREER. And of course, the other accusees, the innocent people who've been wrongly accused in the case, who supported Anne and facilitated some support for her during the process when she wanted to protect her grandson for disclosures, very graphic disclosures, child abuse disclosures that he made, and they were directly reported and noted and put into the files of the brief of the CDPP, who's the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions. They've actually put those very disclosures that were recorded of her grandson, and they were in the files, in the brief. So when I came to see the case, it was to me open and shut, to be honest. I couldn't believe that this grandma had, sorry, what do they call them again? I keep forgetting.
Oh, she had ankle bracelet.
Yeah, she had an ankle bracelet.
2.5 years, I think.
2.5 years, okay. And so that was my primary goal first, to remove her ankle bracelet. And I did a case and I won on that, and that was removed. So we felt very positive and reassured that we were going on the right track. But it was a moment of embarrassment that judge really had. As a grandma with no criminal background, with no history, they've inflicted on her this hideous ankle bracelet. It's only transitional ever. These ankle bracelets are ever only transitional. Even the worst pedophiles don't get that. Okay, and yet a grandmother with no criminal history, okay, was put in this by the courts. Okay, I mean, this is a phenomenal stuff. And so when I went before, we decided not to call them judges because they don't deserve that label. Get is his name, okay, and he was a previous CDPP. And now he's a deputy chief magistrate of the in the Brisbane court. And he was insulting, to say the least. We presented a case. It was very clear. I even closed the court. So I closed the court so that any submissions I made were not public. It was only for his eyes, okay? And so I took artistic license. So when you close the court, you could actually be more open with the judge about things. And so I said, there's all of these disclosures are on the record. This is open and shut case. You cannot, there's double jeopardy occurring here because GREER is being prosecuted, not just in the family court. She's also being criminalized as a grandmother. This is appalling. I ask for the court not to enable injustice. That's all I said in my submissions. I mean, Paul, helped me with them too. So there was nothing controversial about those submissions, Paul.
No.
And when he then came to make the decision, the very day of him making the decision, he read out my disclosures publicly. He named the grandson publicly. It was the judge that actually named the boy. This is all on public record, by the way. So if I say the boy's name, I'm not in trouble. It's Justice Get that actually said, he goes, "Did you not say this to me privately, Ms. Teffaha?" I'm like, what are you talking about? Privately.
It's nuts.
And so he reported me to the Victorian Legal Services Board. He reported me personally for apparently bringing the judiciary into disrepute through private disclosures. So that's what's happened. Unfortunately, it was a complete farce. He made a decision to commit all of them. In a flurry at the end of that court case, me questioning him, that was in the transcript, me questioning him and him storming out of the court and banging the door. Okay, wow. At the end, it was just a disgusting. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And this is where we're up to right now. That was my personal involvement. Of course, they've continued on trying to fight. Paul Burton has been with them through it all. Okay, Graham Bell has been with them through it all. Dee McLachlan has been supporting them through it all. We've all shown our faces. We are not going to accept this. They are trying to sabotage now. As you saw last week, they kicked out Paul from the court for no reason at all. This is an absolute disgrace.
They don't want the public there, Serene.
Yeah,
that's what
they
it's
don't want
about.
the public there.
And they don't want them knowing. And I said Patrick's going in this week, and he's actually putting an application to get Judge Claire, Miss Claire, let's not call her a judge, to recuse herself. And her behaviour is absolutely appalling. Like, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, to even be in a court while you're sitting in the gallery and they're being highly defamatory about me personally and calling me like a QAnon member. And people in the gallery we're going like, what the fuck are you fucking nut jobs on about? And we're supposed to sit there silently while they crap on, talking absolute shit about us. So now they want to keep the public away, and they want Russell and Patrick, who have been separated to their own trials, so they're not even now with Anne and Cassie Doubleday. They've got their own private trial from 5th of June. And they want to cut everyone off for them. They want to keep the jury in with them privately, fully controlled, an electronic trial where they can't, so it's hard for them to put evidence, attend to stuff, fully controlled, with the gallery and all of us in another room with no support whatsoever, with one guy being profoundly deaf as well. Patrick's profoundly deaf. They don't give a fuck.
They don't, and this is fascism. I mean, I've got no.
Oh, absolutely, no, it's fascism.
Fascism. We are under fascism right now. If this Claire and the clowns, these prosecutor clowns, these absolute these vicious barristers and prosecutors that are paid on government time for the willful persecution of these people. They are being, as Paul Burden, he was kicked out. He made a video, which please, if you can link into this,
which is doing surprisingly well. It's one of my most successful live casts for quite some time.
I think my last count was 42,000, I believe, Paul.
Well, that's
a big viewing.
I can understand why. I mean, the level of corruption's out of control, so I can see why people are starting to wake up and realising how fucking appalling this is. I mean, Miss Claire needs to recuse herself. She's not a judge. You know, I mean, she made a comment in court suggesting, well, I'm not even a pastor. And that's why I said on my live cast, I said, the question is not whether or not I'm a pastor, it's whether or not you're a judge. You know?
I love that, Paul. I love
because
that.
Because it is. Paul. It's disgraceful, you know, like,
So with the most recent pre-trial hearing that was last week, yourself, Paul, and Dee, you were up there. What was the actual purpose of that trial?
It was a pre-trial hearing just to ventilate any other matters that need to be sorted for the court process for the trial. And the trial was at that time set for the 22nd of May. So they pulled them in. What they did straight away, which was unusual, is they got the four of them separate and they put them in the dock. The dock up in the Queensland court is like a goldfish bowl. It's this plastic box that sits in the front of the court that stops anyone from contacting you from behind or around the sides. And they surrounded them with police on either side. So I was in the side, and they isolated Cassie Doubleday, Anne GREER, Russell Pridgeon and Patrick O'Day in that box with no support. And then there was a discussion, and the discussion firstly began about Russell, a book that Russell wrote, he didn't publish. There was discussion about that, but the primary discussions were about separating the trial. So what they did on the last court date is they separated Anne GREER and Cassie Doubleday are now together, and they're from the 22nd of May. And Russell and Patrick are now together from the 5th of June, about 2 weeks later. And they've done that deliberately because I think they're going to have to play the video of Anne's grandson in her case. But that if they separate the case, then they can't play the video in Patrick and Russell's, and they're still going to block that evidence that helps them run their defence. So it's strategic. They've strategically separated them to serve their own willful interests, corrupt interests. That's basically what happened. I mean, it was appalling. I said, I've never seen anything. This kind of behaviour is a whole new level of pain. I mean, I'm used to dealing with a high level of corruption, and I've come to my own conclusions about the failures of the judicial system. This is not a judicial system, but this is, like Serene said, this is all-out fascism now. And unfortunately, you know, dealing with an implied democracy at the very least, we have certain ways of doing things that are respectful. Fascism's different. You know, if you're actually dealing with fascism, the mechanisms for dealing with fascism are quite different from that of an implied democracy. So we're at the cutting edge now of the absolute failings, the systemic failings and collapse of this system. In my view, that's what
Well, it's really interesting because I think we've kind of established that the police protocol is now to conceal abuse. That is their protocol. So when that's the protocol, the courts follow suit. And so it goes to when Patrick stood up at the end, at the last hearing, he said, Your Honour, I want, I would like that what's in evidence to be brought forward into my case so it can go to the credibility of the police officer. And Ms. Clare said, your defense is what's in your head. And she said the same to Russell. And the incredible thing is they are withholding Russell's evidence. His evidence is his computer that they've stolen.
Yeah, they took it from him.
So
years ago.
he cannot rely even on his evidence. They won't give it back. And so the same thing was said to him. Russell stood up and the judge continually said they were misbehaving. I've never seen them misbehave, denigrating the supporters. And Russell said, Your Honour, I need to put forward what I saw, what I believed at the time. She said, I've ruled on that. You've got what's in your head. So when you see this as a reasonable person, and that's what the courts are about, when you see this as a reasonable person, you realize that there is absolutely no justice rolling out.
No, not a shred of anything.
And you've been writing about this for so many years, from both an academic point of view and from, as well, I call it, a spiritual point of view, because we need people, writers like you, who are exposing it. You've seen it. It's been bad for a little while, but why do you think it's getting to this point of?
I think it's getting to this point because what I proved in South Australia is that child abuse, it's the protocol to conceal child abuse. It's the protocol to assist the child trafficking, the child removals industry, the cash for kids industry. That's the protocol. It's the protocol for ministers to shut their mouths. They are not involved in the departments. And so Paul, you might want to go to your recent case on the malicious prosecution. That further proves there are no prosecutors.
The whole thing's absolutely nuts. I think that the thing that I think really sums it up is actually my High Court thing, but the fact that the laws used to allegedly to protect the identities and privacy of children are actually protecting the identities and privacies of the abusers of children. And they put that in place, arguing that it's there to protect children, whether it's the family court or children's court local, children's court state jurisdiction. But that law, in effect, is doing exactly the opposite, which is what I tried to argue to the High Court, but the High Court's refused to hear it now. So I can't even get into the High Court to run that argument, which just goes to show you.
You're being shut down. You're being shut down at every level.
Every level, just completely shut down.
And what Dee has said, this ideology has now infiltrated every element of bureaucracy, every element of judiciary. I cannot but call it out for what it is. It is a pedophile agenda. It's front line and center for me. It's in Laura's case. It's in all the cases I've dealt with. I look at it and I think, wow, I feel so helpless sometimes to think, how do you actually come to unravel it when we're talking about not just a few individuals, but the majority of the individuals in the system are playing towards what Dee had just said. I also would say it's very important to say it here that Russ's book, Everybody Knows, and and I like that Julia has called this Everybody Knows. It is a very striking book because it explains Russ's motivations and all of this, which I believe is frontline and center why they're holding on to this attack against Russ and Patrick, and that is that they wanted to establish the anti-pedophile party. You know, that was historically something that they were doing very much and very consistently. And this is very much why this case is being played out against them, because this book, everybody knows, is now streaming. I think it's a lot of people.
It's
going
going
off,
off.
isn't it? Yeah,
I have to share in court when they're all talking about it. Like, you know, they're all discussing it. So the barrister representing Miss Doubleday was talking. She went on and on about it. And senior counsel Mr. Bean, I call him Mr. Dean.
What did they say?
They're going on and on about the book and how appalling it is, but they're referring to different sections. And it dawned on me pretty quickly that the only way they could have done that is they've all bought copies. Like, and even Miss Claire, who's not a judge, who's purporting to be a judge, even Miss Claire said, wow, it seems quite popular. I'm saying, look, this is the book that even all the barristers are buying. You know, the book that's, you know, apparently illegal, which is not, of course. But I just thought
I love how they're saying that this is apparently pedophilia is a conspiracy theory.
Give us a break.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, and I would say this to them. I would say this very openly, that the major report that was produced on the review of the family court recommended the shutdown and the abolishment of the family court. And this is another part of government looking at the judiciary at the time. This was 5 years ago, and it was shut down. That report was shut down. They were saying that they were making decisions that were so appalling, that was so insensical, that was so infuriating, that we must shut down this putrid institution called the family court for nothing else, really, even though they didn't name it by its name, because it's the thing that no one names, pedophilia. It's the word that no one names, you know.
It's interesting, but I'd raise, and what I'll do, it's like it's if they try to hold me in contempt or anything, or they'd even try it with Russell or anyone else, I would argue that you can't, because in order to charge me with contempt, you'd have to prove it was a court, and it's not a court. Right, and I'd also quote Walton versus Gardner. I says the High Court says when a court condones an abusive process, you don't have to abide by that court because it's no longer operating as a court. So even the High Court says I don't have to, abide by a court that's unlawful, that condones. And I'm watching firsthand Miss Claire hiding clear testimonies of the children disclosing sexual abuse, and I'm fucking over it. And I think any reasonable person that sees those videos would form the same opinion as Russell and Patrick and Anne. And this is a farcical fucking bullshit mess. We engaged with like 60 police officers in total. We've got 2 senior police officers that are literally lying through their fucking teeth. They're saying that a child didn't disclose when they know he did, and they keep and want to hide that from the jury as well. These people are full of shit. Yes. Miss Claire is full of shit. Senior counsel is full of shit, and then they want to call us some kind of bizarre conspiracy theory
it's
when
outrageous.
all we're talking about is our reasonable belief that children were abused, because we've seen those videos as well, and other testimonies. So I have a reasonable belief based on my own information. So now I'm some kind of bizarre QAnon elite cult leader with a bunch of people in the gallery that are some kind of extremists. And the response to that really is, if they're going to start that kind of crap, then we may as well call them fucking lizards, and say you guys are fucking lizards, because if you're going to call me QAnon, then I'll call you fucking lizards.
Well,
fucking pieces of lizard shit,
Paul, can you just quickly point out the fact that when you spoke to me last, I think it may have not been the last hearing, but the one before, where you actually presented the evidence of the child's disclosures in an affidavit to Miss Claire, and
I was so distressed, but particularly of the treatment of Patrick. Patrick's profoundly deaf. Patrick was in the Rhodesian army for about 8 years. He's driven over 4 landmines, right? His legs are fused together. It's hard for him to walk long distances. He's now in his late 60s, I think. He's 5 to 10 years older than me. So I had a really pretty rough child, highly PTSD, and they're just ignoring all of that. So I put an affidavit into the court, and I outlined, 1, Patrick's health conditions that I were aware of, to make the court aware, also telling her who I was, because she was questioning but wouldn't allow me to talk. And I also put in the testimony of Anne's grandchild, and also the statement of David Miles where he perjures himself. Put it in because I knew it was in evidence, but just to make sure, I actually physically put it in a USB stick. I went down Serene, I filed it in the registry, made sure a copy, I served a copy on the prosecution with all of that evidence, the whole bit. And then I sat and watched her read it. And I said to Russell, make sure you draw her attention to the affidavit of Pastor Paul Robert Burton. She sat there, read the whole fucking thing while I'm looking at her, right? And then basically did fucking nothing. She just said, I'm not convinced that, you know, Patrick has any disability. She said, Pastor Paul is not, sorry, Paul, she doesn't like to call me pastor because I'm not one, according to her, like I don't think she's a judge. She said that I'm not a, you know, mental health specialist or blah, blah, blah. So how would I know? And why would she give any weight to my view about Patrick's health? And then she decided, when I might add, that she's not a specialist either. She's a judge, supposedly. So she just can't blast ignored that. She didn't even mention the video, and she was looking at it, and I'm looking at her and she's looking at it. She can see it there. And I also put in at the bottom of it about the administration of justice falling into disrepute in the eyes of any reasonable person if she proceeds. I watched her read it and she just ignored it.
And it's
Completely
so
ignored
important, Pastor Paul, so important to note that they isolate everyone from these individuals, that they push them to a point of complete financial ruin. They disengage them from the system so that they don't get any proper supports. They force them into self-represented scenarios. They don't give them the mental health supports or anything objective.
No support.
No,
Absolutely not.
not even
Completely
hearing
isolate them.
support.
Absolutely. This is, as Pastor Paul and Dee and all of
It's
us.
discrimination. Patrick's
And
like,
fascism. Yeah, fascism to the extreme. I mean, if at the end of this, they want to put these two elderly gentlemen for caring about children in prison, honestly, I could tell them right now that this will be the key for revolution.
absolutely.
This will be a key for revolution, and
More than that, it's the end of the judicial system as we know it, because it will no longer exist. Because I, for one, I'm not going to value it at all. Right? It has no. I can completely ignore it. Like Wharton versus Gardner have the legal right. I'm not going to abide by anything from this crap shit thing of a thing that they call a court. It's just a fucking joke.
It's interesting that Mary Maxwell, who's writing a series of articles on the book, has. I mean, that's why they're worried about the book, because the book exposes the whole thing. And that's
exposes that, yes. Exactly.
Yes.
I think it's important for all of us. We should be mentioning the public officers involved, whether it's the police, whether it's members of the judiciary, and anyone that's complicit. Like if they're condoning this process and they're hiding or playing a role in hiding clear sexual disclosures of abuse by children, they're condoning it. Right, so they need to be named and shamed, without a doubt. So
without a doubt, Pastor Paul, what
I find absolutely shocking in all these court situations is that there are 3 children that have had all these reports done, all these videos. The judge or the magistrates all through the years have said, what about the children? Are the children all right? This has got nothing to do with children. The protocol is to conceal child abuse, and that goes all the way up to the courts. They are concealing child abuse. That's simple. That's a simple game.
You know, as far as what we can do in the system that's failing like this, it becomes very difficult because, you know, seeking a judicial remedy, if it's that corrupt, it's like a loaded game of poker. How can you win? My concerns, I think, primarily is Anne never even got to run her Dietrich argument. Dietrich, as you must probably know, Serene, is a case, quite a significant case. But the Dietrich argument was that by taking Anne to court and Russell and that for some number of weeks, after 4.5, 5 years of draconian bail conditions, having their lives decimated, means they don't even have the money to find themselves somewhere to live.
Absolutely.
You know, in fact, at one point, it was one funny moment we had in there when Anne actually said to the judge, could you please see about changing my bail conditions so I can talk to Russell and Patrick? So that way, when we're staying over in our tents in the park, we can at least talk to each other.
It's just shocking.
That's where we're at. So these people are now forced into going into Brisbane, you know, when Anne's right up in bloody Townsville, and Patrick's actually not that far. He's only about 3 hours away now because he lost everything and had to move out of New South Wales and he's staying with his son. Russell's in New South Wales in Newcastle, but he's had to give up his medical practice, which it took 3 years to get his license back, which they should never have taken. And then he's operated here for about 8 months next door, and we helped him get his business up. He's had to give it up because he can't support his patients. He's a very dedicated doctor, and he said, I just don't have the energy because court's sucking the life out of me. So they've destroyed his life again. Right.
And I think it's so important, Pastor Paul, segue into this. I'm making a call out to all my clients, my followers, people who are listening to this. If you have a space in Brisbane that you could make available for the group that is supporting, as well as Anne herself, Russell and Patrick, if you've got a home, if you've got a space, if you've got you know, even a caravan or two, whatever it is that you have, or you're happy to host the group that will be supporting Anne and Russell and Patrick, then would please ask you to put your hand up and get in touch with me. My number is 0425754299, and all the links will be put with this video by our lovely Julia.
Yeah, they need a space, because I mean, Karen, lovely Karen from the church here, paid for Russell for the last few days up in McLachlan, and I paid like the cheapest I could find in the area, and I got a real shithole for $115 a night when I stayed up there and paid at my own expense. But they're between a rock and a hard place. Russell's at the moment fighting to get Centrelink, because I think he might be able to get a pension now, even though for 4.5 years he couldn't even get a pension because they said he had so much money overseas that Centrelink wouldn't help him. They lied, of course. Darren Williamson just lied through his teeth and made absolute shit up about Russell. So that's how bad it is for these people. They're completely on their arse, the three of them. I've done a fundraiser and I got about $4.5 or something together so far on a page on my website. And I've given a little bit of that money to Anne and to Patrick. Russell's refusing to accept it at the moment because he's got a tiny bit of funds and he wants to save it for what we need. But we're in trouble because, you know, if they're going to be there at least for, you know, 4 weeks plus in this trial, we've got to stay somewhere in the greater Brisbane region. We need to be relatively close to the Brisbane core. And it's really Patrick, Anne and Russell, all of them, all three of them need it, plus a bunch of people like myself and a few other support people coming along as well. But primarily it's for the defendants themselves and one or two others, but anyone that's got a property or a place that they can help us out with. Again, we don't even mind paying a little bit because we've got a tiny bit of money, but we, you know, the prices in Brisbane are out of control. And
no, I'm definitely asking, please, to all the followers, supporters, you'd be doing a huge, like we're putting all of this time. I mean, Pastor Paul D, everyone, Julia, everyone puts their time for free here. This is because
we don't get paid, and you know, we don't, and no one pays me to fly up there. I've done it all on my own expense, you know.
And we become so involved in these cases because we can't imagine the kind of world that we're living in if we continue to just turn a blind eye to this, because they're coming for everybody. This is the truth, you know. These bad people are everywhere. Okay, I'm talking about everywhere. They're not just our bureaucrats and judges, they're our police officers, they are employees in benign places. They're the partners that you become involved in, unfortunately. Okay, who are involved in drugs, who are involved in trafficking children, who are involved in petty crime, who are violent, you know, who are a threat. Okay, and you know, it's everywhere, and we have to be very astute. They're in our hospitals, for God's sake. I have a case
school systems.
In our school systems, okay, they're everywhere. They lurk everywhere. You know, I have a client whose son, opened his eyes the next day. He entered the hospital. He, you know, said something about some medication, and they deemed him a conspiracy theorist, and off he went to the mental health ward. I mean, it could happen to us anywhere, everywhere. It is a very, we cannot just stand here and think that's okay. And as for naming and shaming, I've been doing that, Paul, for a long time. You know, I've named and shamed that bastard barrister. I say it, I have no shame in calling what he's actually, if he wants to go around and call you and call everyone in the gallery QAnon, what an absolute numbhead he is, okay? I called him Clown Mark Dean KC. I've got no shame in calling his name out. How dare he? How dare he call anyone QAnon for supporting? Okay, this is actually standing up against pedophilia. That's what we're doing. Okay, we're standing up against perpetrators and perverts of the worst kind. And you want to reduce it, mate, to QAnon. There's something wrong with your head. That's what it tells me.
You know what? Yeah. And that shows me is that they're going to any length to try and dim us, our light, our strength that we all have, because they have to, well, it's child's play. They act like children in the courts.
They project.
They project, exactly.
They project what they are.
They project what they are.
Yes,
they
that's
project
right.
what they are
exactly.
continuously. That's exactly what they do. And at one point, I actually saw Miss Claire, and I think she almost realised that when she was saying some things, and it would come from discussions about me, and she almost like dropped her foot in it, because I think she realised that she just identified themselves, because I was looking at her going like, fucking, you just said it pretty good. You know? They are. So I think, so Serene, we really need any people up in that region, Brisbane region, particularly if it's close to the CBD, because we're 415 George Street, the Brisbane District Court, that's easy to get from train or commute by train. On the train line would be really helpful, or close, for Patrick, Russell and Anne.
And could you tell us the dates again, Paul?
Now, okay, well, Anne is actually from the 22nd of May. Anne and Cassie Doubledays begins from the 22nd of May, and that's expected to run for about 2 weeks. Then Russell's is from the 5th of June, and that could run 2 to 4 weeks. It's hard to say. So that's one of the most important thing is a calm. Then also another thing of equal importance that we need to say is we do need people to attend this court. Like I'm going to try and get up there when I can, but this is the other travesty too. That it's like 4 weeks, right? Plus say for Russell, and I've got to try and help Anne now. They've got 2 trials. I've got to get up there for both. So how do I sustain going up there, helping support them for 4 to 6 weeks when I can't work at all down here? I mean, I've got a really great community down here that will give me some support, and I'm going to have to be there as much as possible. So I'm going to be there a lot. But and
I need to let people know that they're going to try to push Pastor Paul out, but he'll need to be there because, and I'm going to try to be there. I can't be there for Anne and I can't be there for Anne Greer's one, but I can be there for Russ and Patrick. And so, you know, I want people to understand that Pastor Paul and Dee and everyone is putting their whole lives on hold for this, and it is our collective responsibility. If you can provide the space, I can't even tell you how much gratitude that would be for both periods of time. I think if you want to do something charitable, this is not about giving money. We're actually asking for a space. So it's a different way of giving. It's giving a physical space, okay, and it's also being there physically. I know there's a lot of people in Brisbane who follow me and who care for me, and I've done a lot of very beautiful charitable work for people in Brisbane. So I'm making a big call out for them to go and attend those courts, because, you know, it's one thing to cheer on people who do the good things, you know, like, yeah, good on you, you're so good. But really, we need to all be there. Like, we all have to be there. I'm asking people to be there.
They do. It's the old Gandhian quote, isn't it? Be the change you wish to see in the world. If you want this to change, it's there. You have to be present in person. You got to get into that court to really see what's going on here and understand.
And remember, you have to understand that while, you know, all of you guys are doing nothing. Why? I mean, earning. This is a depleting exercise, whereas the Mr. Dean and his team are in essence, I think, misappropriating Commonwealth funds.
Oh, massive amounts of money.
Misappropriating Commonwealth funds to prosecute this case. This is the crime of the last 20-30 years, and it's a classic case.
And he's committing defamation, not just defamation against Paul Burton. He's a liar. He's making false allegations. None of us are QAnon. In fact, most of us criticize QAnon.
I've never even
no bloody clue.
I've never even said anything once on any platform about that.
You haven't mentioned it, Julia. I'm against QAnon. Paul Burton is not even in his head about that. And Dee's an academic writer. Like, seriously, you absolute dimwit.
The interesting thing is, Claire does not like, she believes that the supporters are sort of, can you remember the words that she said?
Right from the beginning, she said that this thing's clearly been organised. And it was like, well...
Projection!
That right from the beginning, it's like, well... Yeah, okay, like, you know, and I knew some of the people. Well, I did know some of the people. I got to know most of them there, and I met a lot of people for the first time that were there too. But so I find that kind of interesting. But yeah, organised. So I don't know. It's this thing of projection that's doing my head in. I have to share with all three of you. I just don't. I'm just watching how they project this stuff all the time, and what I particularly don't like is the way they think that they have a right to be abusive or defamatory while they're in court while I'm sitting there.
Yes.
And I think whether it was me or you, Serene, or anyone else, no matter, or Julia, if you'd been there, they would have been saying shit about you, right? So
Saying things,
why
they don't even do their homework. This is the problem. They
Yeah.
don't even do their homework. They go in and start spouting all this rubbish, all this
all this rubbish and stuff like that, you know, like, I mean, I've discovered that Mr. Dean and Mr. Whitmore actually have been collecting children and eating them, and they actually are lizards, you know, and I know that for a fact. You know? So, you know, if we all agree on that and say that together, then that's a stronger case as anything he's presented about us being QAnon. But I do think they are. They actually are lizards in bodies.
On that than anything about QAnon.
Oh, you don't need any evidence. This is a whole new system now. We don't need evidence anymore. As long as you put it up on Facebook or you can find someone to agree with you, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know.
And the reality is that you know, we've got mainstream channels. We had recently 60 Minutes with Nick McKenzie doing a big expose that from coast to coast, human trafficking is happening in this country. This is mainstream 60 Minutes. He did a 4-part expose on drug trafficking, drug sitters, on human trafficking. He says every second or third brothel is actually being conducted from motels, okay, and young women are being imported in the thousands, okay. They are actually, you make the call to go and see a girl in one of those places, she's more than likely to be human trafficked. This is not legitimate prostitution. This is human trafficking, and this is Nick McKenzie coming out, you know, in 60 Minutes, because now they've taken him up in 60 Minutes, and good for him. And he's made this entire expose about this. And now these people want to stand up, and he actually named and shamed. He named and shamed the criminals. He said that the Department of Immigration was bringing in Chinese pedophiles to run pedophile rings in this country.
It's definitely in the immigration, through the immigration.
Oh,
I
yeah,
know that already.
He said the Department of Immigration will allow a whole bunch of women to come through, no checks and balances. They'll allow one of the biggest criminals who was put in jail in China, has been brought here for pedophile rings. The UK caught him out and sent him to China, and he went into prison. And guess who hired him? Australia. We bring him here. He owns so many properties. Okay. I'll put the links too as well, Julia, for people to watch, that this is mainstream. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy fact. Okay. We are in the behest of a big human trafficking ring, pedophilia on all of its level, whether it's bringing girls in unlawfully or whether it's trading children here in this country, okay, that are the children of, and I hate to say it, family members that are complete perverts who will abuse their children. Okay, it is the whole gamut's worth, from human trafficking of the Asian girls all the way to our own children that are born into incestuous pedophile families. Okay, and we need to call that out. We need to say this is not a conspiracy. This is the reality. When they've done a check, then 1 in 3 women have been child sexually abused and reported in this country. 1 in 3 women, and let alone how many children. This is the pandemic of our time, and we're supposed to shut our faces. Sorry,
that's so well said. Thank you, Serene. You know, it's great.
She's passionate, isn't she?
And Mr. Dean should understand that Australia was voted as #1 child abusers of the world by a scientific study by Palmer and Milne. 2015.
Well, they're the facts. Even now, Productivity Commission says 5.1% of all children in Australia have some kind of intervention from government child protection agencies. 5.1%. They're not all removed at this time, but 5.1% of all children in this country. That's in 2021. So that's going up. That's getting to a pretty scary kind of level. And we're seeing this across the board. The reports I get from families all the time, it's just tragic because we can't help them in the courts because the courts are failing.
No. And that is the crisis. That if this case were to run honestly, transparently, and fairly, it would expose the what's going on. Instead, it is facilitating and condoning what has been going on in the judiciary. So this is a real test case, and Claire is going to show her hand.
We have to shine a light in the darkness. That's what we can do, just through our networks. I think the more people that attend, the better. If we can support Russell in any way, if somebody can help with a comment, it'd be great, because these people do need support. And I think that's really, really important, just moving forward. Shine a light in the darkness, expose this shocking corruption. I would remind people you should try and buy a copy of Everybody Knows while you can, because it's going through the roof.
Yeah.
And I said even all the barristers and everyone buying it, but it's sold out of physical copies within 2 days. So I don't know how many. They wouldn't have done a big print run at first, maybe a few hundred or something. But
so where can people buy it? Where?
Amazon.
I'll give you the link, Julia. We'll put the link in as well with all. We'll get the studies, everything we've mentioned in this. We'll put it in the link, so people, again, we're promoting education, we're promoting awareness. You know, we've reached a point now, and I really want to make this message very clear to every corrupt, insidious police officer, sergeant, detective, every prosecutor that is either involved directly or indirectly, Queensland Police, as CDPP, magistrates, judiciary, Supreme Court judges, magistrate judges, magistrates, everyone that's involved in this, the barristers, I say the absolute dirty, bloody barristers.
Let's not forget the media as well.
And the media, the absolute rotten media, the absolute grubby, rotten media.
Disgusting.
I will say these words to them. We will not stop. You better watch out. Everybody does know. Everybody knows. And we are not going to stop. We're not going to stop in exposing you. If you are going to send these people to prison, I mark my words that this will be a signal of a massive revolution in this country. As Dee said, this is the most significant case in this country, with Laura's case as well. I believe they're both highly significant, but this Operation Noetic, even the word noetic, as Dee Wright says, no ethics. Noetic is 100% a Freemasonic reference, okay, to the abstract. It is about creating a lie. Noetic itself means abstract lies. That's what it means. They've named their very operation, the very lie. They tell you in your face that this is about abstract lies. Okay, and so let's all be very aware of that too.
Beautiful. I didn't know that. Thanks, Serene.
Yeah.
Wow.
My
you guys,
Freemasonic understanding of things.
Yeah. All right, guys. I guess we can probably wrap it up there. If there's anything else that anyone would like to mention before
we'll put the contact details on. I think we covered all the main stuff. But
thank you so much for everything that you guys do. I've just it's I think the viewers will be able to start taking some action, more action, because it's one thing to be like same thing what I did. I sat there and watched a lot of interviews. I took notes. I did things here and there, but it wasn't until I started attending court hearings and actually seeing this for myself where it really hit me in the face of how much trouble we're in. And as a collective, we've allowed this to happen, and we all have to take responsibility, like Serene said. So
I just realised on one practical level too, Patrick's filing today. He's going to call me momentarily, but he's filing that application for Miss Claire to recuse herself. And he'll get a date within about a week for that. But he's at this point in time going to be going to do that alone. So here's a guy that's profoundly deaf, right, with all of those officers against him. I'm going to do what I can to support him, but I imagine if I go, they're most probably not even going to allow me in the building. We'll have to see what they do. I've never done any...
I'll speak to you about that, Paul, and see where I could be, and if I can be there to support him physically, I will. And
he's going to get a date today, because the registrar sets it down in the court and he's going to phone me. And I said, make sure it's not under a week, Patrick, so I can't make enough time to see if I can kind of get there to support you, because I think he needs support. I think he can do it himself. And he knows his case, and this is straight down the money. This is straight on corruption and the fact that she's hiding 2 senior police officers that are clearly misleading the court, and she refuses to play Anne Greer's grandchild's video, which goes to the credibility of witnesses. right? And she's just blocking all that stuff. So this is straight down the guts. You're blocking this from going to the gallery, going to the jury. So as a consequence, you're clearly biased and you're corrupt, and you need to step down.
Yeah.
I love that. I think I just also want to say thank you, Julia, for providing these platforms now, because I think it's really important for young people to understand what's happening around them. It's very brave of you. I know that you've had to personally bear some costs around the bravery of what you're doing, and I think that has to be recognized and noted. And we really do appreciate that so much. Dee, you have been a voice in the jungle for such a long time. You know, you're so fearless amongst the beasts. And you really are an academic and an intellectual of a very high degree of respect that you get from me. I can't even tell you how much I respect you. And Paul, you fiery beast, you brave man. You are.
I love the way Paul speaks up. I love the way he speaks
I
up.
can't help it. I'm
You
like
are
this one. It's
call it out as it is, and you are.
And
an
you too,
inspiration.
Serene. It's just
You
like
too. Yeah.
unbelievable.
It needs to be done. You know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hard to not do anything else.
All of you.
Anyway, yeah, blessings to all. So we'll close this up now and talk soon, and to be continued.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.